In today's breaking story, the Pentagon just caught Donald Trump by surprise with a new bomb. That's right, it seems Donald Trump has no idea what's going on. How's it going, everybody? Hunter Avalone here with Occupy Democrats. Welcome back to another video. Now, Trump is insane, and he is losing whatever little grip he had left on reality.
New this morning, business leaders are warning that recent moves by the president, like his sweeping global tariffs, like publicly pressuring the Federal Reserve to slash interest rates, and like threatening media companies for simply criticizing him, all of this, business leaders now warn, could have a serious impact on the economy. CNN's Matt Egan joining us now with much more on this. What are they warning? What are you seeing?
Yeah, Kate, look, there is growing alarm among some political scientists about the state of democracy in America. Just think about some of the recent events, right? August 1, the president fired the nation's top statistician over a bad jobs report, right? The U.S. is taking a 10% stake in Intel. The president announced that he's firing for the first time ever a sitting governor of the Federal Reserve. And just last week, the chair of the FCC threatened Disney over Jimmy Kimmel comments. Now, this is all really just since the second half of the summer and just some events that are touching the business world. I talked to Vanessa Williamson over at the Brookings Institution, and she told me that the threats against Disney and ABC, she said that's what you would expect to see in an unfree country. She said it's straight from the autocratic playbook, and she said she's never been more concerned about the state of democracy in the U.S. And some conservatives, they're cringing at the heavy-handed approach that the administration has taken with the private sector. The president's own former vice president, Mike Pence, he was on CNBC, and he said that state ownership, that's the kind of thing that's common in China and in Russia, countries that are, of course, far from democracy. And he said that these moves have taken our country to a very perilous place.
This could absolutely spell trouble for Republicans moving forward.
Look at where we are right now in September of 2025. Look how much closer AOC is to the top now than Bernie Sanders was back a decade ago. She's at 12%, so she has 6 times his amount of support. But more than that, look how much closer she is to the leader. Gavin Newsom leads the field right now, but just with 21%. She is within 10 points of Gavin Newsom. I never thought I would have seen the day when someone as liberal as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is to the leader. She's 9 points back as opposed to what? 67 points back Bernie Sanders was a decade ago at this point. If we thought Bernie Sanders was a long shot back in June of 2014, at this particular point, AOC has a very real shot, at least according to the early numbers that we see so far.
And now let's get into today's top story. The Pentagon just caught Trump by surprise with a new bomb. It all started when the Pentagon announced a controversial new policy being rolled out over the weekend.
Now, there is a new clash between the Pentagon and the press. The U.S. military has rolled out sweeping new rules that force reporters to sign pledges restricting what they can see, where they can go, and even what information they can access, even if it is unclassified. Now, under the new policy, journalists inside the Pentagon will no longer have the freedom to roam around the building or review documents that have not been formally cleared for release. Now, access is now limited to press pens, the courtyard, and a handful of common spaces.
However, when Trump was asked about this, he seemed to be at odds with Hegseth.
Should the Pentagon be in charge of deciding what reporters can report on?
No, I don't think so.
Are you okay with them limiting that?
Nothing stops reporters, you know.
I think the reason is so.
Now it's being speculated that Trump didn't even know what was going on at all.
The Trump White House.
Yeah,
what can
my
you
best
share?
guess is that President Trump didn't know about this new Pentagon plan because that answer makes him sound like he's on a very different page from his Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. All year long, Hegseth has been trying to limit independent news coverage of the Pentagon and of the U.S. military. Hegseth's press office has booted some news outlets, including CNN, from longtime Pentagon workspaces and has brought in pro-Trump news outlets instead. We've also seen efforts to restrict where reporters can travel within the Pentagon complex, but now this new memo is by far the most severe restriction yet. According to a memo from the Pentagon's press office, beat reporters who have press credentials to be at the Pentagon will now have to sign a pledge not to obtain or use unauthorized material. And the definition of unauthorized is so broad that it could basically punish reporters for doing their day-to-day work. Courts have long upheld that journalists are able and free to report on government secrets to inform the public what is going on with their taxpayer dollars. But this new Pentagon policy, it really tries to stop that. It really tries to stop leaks by going so far that it would threaten basically all the members of the Pentagon press corps with having their press credentials revoked at any given time. So we are likely to see media outlets push back strongly against this.
Right. I mean, there's a thing called prior restraint. Right? Tell us more about the legal aspect of this.
And that's what a spokesperson for the Freedom of the Press Foundation brought up to me over the weekend, Pamela. He said this policy operates as a prior restraint on publication, which is considered the most serious of First Amendment violations. The New York Times also cited the constitutional protections of the free press in a statement over the weekend. The Wall Street Journal called this new policy deeply disturbing. And NPR's editor-in-chief said he will be working with other news outlets to, quote, push back. Right now, media lawyers and newsroom leaders are evaluating this memo, and they're figuring out the next steps because it is likely there will be some sort of legal battle over this Pentagon attempt to restrict reporting. After all, the U.S. military, the people who work in the Pentagon, they are there working on behalf of the American people. And journalists at the Pentagon, they just want to report on that so we're all better informed.
And for those who don't know what prior restraint is, it is defined by the government taking action to censor speech or to block publication, for example. Brian Stelter, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. And this is a subject very close to me.
Yeah,
I spent several years as a Pentagon correspondent during the first Gulf War, and it's hard for me to believe that Pentagon reporters would lose their credentials, lose their opportunity to report from the Pentagon, even if they reported some innocuous statement or whatever that hadn't been formally announced by the Pentagon. Forget about classified information. This is unclassified information. They would lose their press credentials if they reported it. Only what the Pentagon puts out publicly in press releases could reporters report, and that's not journalism.
That's not freedom of the press, that's
No,
for
it's
sure.
not.
Thanks so much for watching. Please click that like button and subscribe to Occupy Democrats so that you can stay informed and help us stop Donald Trump.